welcome to the Rethink Leadership podcast, available on all platforms including YouTube if you prefer to watch. My name is Jeremy Blain, CEO of Performance Works International, Executive Director of the Transformational Leadership Acceleration Institute, and Managing Partner of Diversity Talent. My aim is to bring insights from leaders, experts, and highly talented professionals from around the world. Insights, stories, and advice from the front lines of modern leadership to engage, inspire, and mobilize progress back in the workplace. Every episode is a learning opportunity for us all. The Rethink Leadership podcast also supports charities around the world. Each episode is in aid of a cause chosen by my guests, and to date I'm proud to say we've supported over 60 global and local great causes. Today I welcome back Futurist, serial tech startup founder and media commentator Dan Sodergren. Dan is a digital marketing, technology and artificial intelligence expert, working with clients, partners and as a regular tech spokesperson on the BBC. His main interest is in the future, be that the future of marketing, the future of work, or how technology and AI will change the world in all walks of life, business and industries, and in fact is changing the world right now. In this episode, I mine Dan's expertise in all things AI and tech to understand the future now implications on business and especially for leaders in how they build the knowledge, skills and behaviours themselves and for the rest of the organisation to unlock the power of artificial intelligence as a big enabler of productivity and of course the human touch. After all, in the digital era, humanity is more important than ever, so we should be celebrating technology that can actually help us be more human, despite what the doomsayers might tell us. This episode is in aid of humansmcr.org, Dan's charity of choice, to which we've made a donation. Humans MCR, based in Manchester, UK, is a food poverty charity that's all about lending a helping hand and putting a smile on people's faces. Dan, thanks very much for joining me. Again, please tell those that were tuning in this time a little bit about yourself and bring us up to date in terms of where we are around digital innovations, tech, generative AI, from your perspective as an artificial intelligence and digital marketing expert.
Wow, it's I'd love to do the second bit first, but I best do the first bit first. This is the way of introduction. So yeah, my name's Dan Sodergren. I have the joy of now I've been working around AI for about a decade or so. I also have the joy of knowing a few of the people who are now the kind of called the godfathers of AI because of some lucky family connections and some other stuff from back in the day. So I had the joy of knowing people like Demis Hables and was talking about his genius, 17 years ago, and everyone thought I was mad. But now, of course, he runs DeepMind, but also now runs Google's part of Bard and all these other things. And all the stuff we were talking about then, about 10 years ago, now is all happening now. So all the stuff he was talking about is happening. So it makes me look even cleverer. So yeah, so part of my job is to be a futurist. And again, that's just been luck because of people I've known and also because of some crazy ideas that I kind of grabbed hold of and did stuff with around augmented reality and other stuff back in the day. So I'm called a tech futurist. I work with the BBC quite a bit. And now, of course, AI is the big thing. It's kind of become the big thing very, very quickly. And believe you me, ladies and gentlemen, it's not going to be a smaller thing. As a friend of mine said this morning, I think it's a brilliant way of looking at it. We are one day nearer to sentience than we've ever been before. And you can pretty much say that every day, of course. So whether it needs to be sentient for it to be effective, of course it doesn't. It's just computer intelligence rather than artificial intelligence. It's just everyone likes to say AI. In reality, it's large language models, but it's the way that people can use these and some other bits of clever stuff behind the kind of scenes means that this is the fifth industrial revolution, and we've only just got over the fourth.
Yes, I can understand the pace of change is incredible. And I think you're doing yourself down a little bit. It's not just luck, Dan. I know how much work you've put into this as a futurist and some of those people that you know and that you've been talking up over the years as well. People do hang on your words too. And for me, I started talking to you probably about, it must have been about 8 years ago, 7 years ago while I was away. And I was very keen to understand a little bit more. And I'm going to ask you kind of a similar question to what I asked you then, which is, how do you think all of this is going to impact small, medium and large and multinational organizations as we're seeing such an acceleration around this?
Well, as I say, it's the fifth industrial revolution. You know, the fourth had only just happened, and you can still argue it's the fourth. We all thought that COVID would be the trigger point to this new kind of, obviously because of COVID, we had this global pandemic, and also we had this global experiment, I suppose, in how we work. So remote work became a thing almost overnight. It went from 4% of people up to 40, up to almost 90% of knowledge workers were remote working. And it isn't going back. You know, that gene is not going back. So now we're still in this hybrid work. Now, I thought that hybrid work mode would be the thing that would be the touch paper to this mass productivity. But obviously, I didn't know AI was coming around the corner. The only reason why I didn't know is because even the guys, and I'm afraid it is normally guys in this one, certainly the people I know, they got the maths wrong. They thought we had a decade or so. When we were first chatting, we had a decade. So that's exactly why I invested in Your Flock 5 years ago. Exactly why I started moving out of marketing, because they'd already told me that marketing was pretty much doomed because AI would do it for us. The thing that's amazing is when they started, when Sam Altman very famously opened AI up to everybody else, to everyone, which wasn't really meant to do. And you could argue it may not have been a great idea for society, but we'll see in time. It meant that suddenly this machine learnt by itself almost, and the amount of people using it actually doubled or tripled the speed of it. Yeah, so now everyone's playing catch up. Now, this is semi-exciting when it's just a normal computer, but actually when it's software like artificial intelligence and large language models, it means it's an absolute revolution. It means that everybody who has a computer now and the internet basically can get themselves an intern right now, but an intern that knows pretty much everything. Knows everything about almost everything. Now you could say, well, what's the point of an intern that knows everything about everything? Well, you're not being creative enough if you don't think that's a good thing. Okay. Now this is in every computer that you could own. So if you own 4 computers, you actually could have 4 interns. Now, these interns used to be with GPT 3.5, which a lot of people are still running. Please don't, by the way. Please pay the money and use 4, because the difference between 3.5 and 4 is the difference between a 16-year-old and a 21-year-old. It's literally a graduate that you're going with. So people are going, oh, I'll use the free one. Yeah, if you want to use, that's the same as a 16-year-old's brain. It will lie to you. It does weird stuff. It hallucinates, as they call it, a lot more than 4. Okay, it's quicker and it can give you answers quicker, but they're not as good. It can't go on. There's loads of other things. And there's obviously lots of other AI providers out there. In fact, my whole book, we talk about 111 different tools, and that's out of the thousands that already exist. But anyway, the point of the principle is you've now got this ability which you didn't have before. And if you can kind of understand and wrap your head around that as a kind of a, without being rude about it, as a business advantage, you have the chance to do something that other people have never done before. AI is not going to replace you, but somebody using AI will. That's the key bit here, right? And it's the same as if you didn't use computers before. I can remember when bosses were like, "Oh, I'm not going to use email. I like to phone people," and they used to get their secretaries to print them out, their emails out, and this is the truth. Yeah, you remember we're both old enough to remember these times, and of course we know that those bosses now are no longer bosses. For whatever reasons, or they've evolved and they taught themselves how to use email. Exactly the same with social media. We can all remember when people said Twitter's just a fad and LinkedIn won't be around and social media is just silly and why are people doing it? People said exactly the same about the mobile phone. Mobile phones will never be big. Mobile gaming will never be big. The next thing will never be big. But of course, Jeremy, as you know, technology, it works as an evolution, a little trigger point to what's going to happen next with society. So you can put your head in the sand and say, hey, AI is just a fad. I can absolutely guarantee you that the companies who use AI now will be the companies that are around tomorrow. And it doesn't make a difference. This is the great thing, Jeremy. It doesn't actually make a difference if you're small, medium, or large. The large businesses have the chance to create their own AI systems with proprietary data, and that's the unique selling point. But small businesses with small data could do exactly the same. You can do exactly the same creating a digital twin for yourself just from your own social media posts. You can do exactly the same looking at your customers and creating things with code interpreters that are literally things that CRM customers or CRM systems like Salesforce would charge you thousands of pounds for. You can now build yourself. Now, does this make it exciting? It does for me, of course, as a futurist, because it means that almost the means of production are back into the hands of the people who do the stuff. But what does that mean for large businesses? Oh my goodness, I can honestly say it's a revolution for big businesses too, because they're going to have to like literally, it's just like as your great book says about being a CEO, which I always talk about. You're going to have self-agency now. You're going to have to be your own boss, or certainly be boss-like in the environment. And if the irony, of course, being is you might be a boss of 4 or 5 interns that are AI machines working for you.
Oh, that'll be the day, won't it? And I love what you said earlier about AI won't replace you, but somebody using AI will, because I'm always asked that question. And that's a great retort, which I've not thought of before. So thank you for that one. I'm going to steal that one for the next time, I think. For those tuning in, we have various levels of maturity of understanding this stuff, and I think there's a few terms that you've used just as a punctuation point right now. Dan, could you just explain in layman terms what large language models are and what a digital twin is?
Oh yeah, okay, cool. Digital twin, I'm going to go for a second, because large language model is the basics of the understanding. Yeah, if you can imagine, you take, and I'm just going to be careful with words here, because you could say, oh, it's not exactly right, but I'm going to use it as a metaphor. So you can take all the information that was on the internet, yeah, all of that information, and you scraped all of it and you put it all together, yeah, and then you taught a machine how to understand English, but also the understanding behind English, yeah. So it could almost learn everything. It sounds a bit weird, but it's almost like it's not omnipotent. Of course it's not, because it doesn't really think, but it has the answers for you, because the large language model is set up in a way where it's gleaned all the information it needs out of stuff. So for example, there's 4 or 5 different places where OpenAI got their data from, and now of course it's all about people are now trying to sue them because of privacy and all sorts of stuff. But anyway, so you've got things like Reddit, you've got things like a really interesting one, which is unpublished books. They looked at unpublished books a lot, which I thought was really fascinating. Also published books, which are obviously then out of copyright. So you can imagine this thing. You're like, well, why is it so good at writing? Well, the reason is because what it learned was writing first. That's what the data was, yeah? Now you look at something like an image generator, you say, well, why is it so good at certain images? Or why are certain things like, how is Midjourney different to Stable Diffusion? There's 2 other image creators. And it's because the data that they used to create them was different data sets. Yeah, so it's a different capacity. It's exactly the same as human beings. It's like, how did you train it? How was it trained? Yeah. Now, OpenAI's system was trained very famously on loads of different words from the internet. Yeah. So it's very, very good at that kind of stuff, which is why it's so great at marketing, so great at psychology, so great at law. Pretty good. Now, DeepMind, no, that was the other way around. DeepMind was trained mainly on health data. When we talked about it 8 years ago, that's what they were being great at. But of course, the spin-off of being so great at doing health stuff is also an ability to do the large language model stuff as well, because of course, doctors use language. Yeah, but Google's stuff is, the bar's really pretty good now, actually. But Google's actual speciality is health tech. That's what its AI is good at. Yeah. Then you look at like what's going to happen next with things like Apple. What's Apple going to be good at with AI? Well, Apple famously said they weren't going to move into artificial intelligence. Now they're all in. Now, just imagine what Apple will be good at. And I'm guessing it will not be the same as what OpenAI is good at, because the data sets are going to be different. You got to remember as well that the new Apple headset, that the chip inside that has the power to run a AI system inside it, by the way. So that new headset, yeah, exactly. That new headset has the ability to run AI at the same time. So you're looking like a Jarvis-like setup with augmented reality. It literally is. It will be nuts what that thing can do. Things that could automatically translate things. Anyway, sorry. So, and then you talk about digital twin. Okay, so large language model. That's kind of explain that a little bit. The digital twin side of things is a little bit more, in my opinion, more exciting, because what it allows you to do, just like with augmented reality, you could set up graphically something that didn't really exist in the real world. Like with virtual reality, you can make a factory and then make a digital twin of the factory, and then you could play around with things and see what happened. Yeah, you can do the same, but with yourself. So let's say I could get the AI to read every book you've ever written, Jeremy, and every tweet you've ever done, every LinkedIn post you've ever done, and then I can say, pretend to be Jeremy, and it would then literally hallucinate itself and pretend to be you. Now, you can do this, by the way, this is what's scary about the whole thing. You can do this with pretty much anybody who's ever lived and ever written a lot of information. Yeah, you can make them. You could go and you could use Typing Mind and some other things, which I'll link to. And you could actually go, and this is what I personally do, you say, oh, I'd really love to know what Steve Jobs might think in this moment. Now, of course, the machine isn't really Steve Jobs. Of course it isn't. That would be insane and also horrible from a morality point of view. It doesn't have Steve Jobs' soul in it. Of course it doesn't. But it has everything that Steve Jobs has ever written. So could it predict what Steve Jobs might say? Well, we'll never know, but it's pretty bloody close, I would think, yeah, because I've done it on me, and it's really close. Like when I got my my voice cloned, it only took like 4 minutes of me talking, so it's very easy to find. And then someone cloned my voice and did it, and it did a poetry bit for me about the future of work. It was like 90% right. You know, so you can now potentially create digital twins that could do a lot of your work for you, so you wouldn't have to do it yourself. And that's what's so exciting about it. It's not just the ability to kind of mess about with poetry and, you know, have fun things and great images and all this kind of fun stuff, but it's actually real work. You know, like, can you get people, could you get the AI machine to do your marketing? The answer is yes. Could you get the AI machine to make business decisions for you? The answer is yes. Can you get the AI machine to be your doctor? Well, the answer is yes. And people actually like the AI doctors more than they like the doctors. And the AI machine doesn't need to have a break. It doesn't need to, you know, it can't be stressed. It can't do all the things, negative things that human beings can do. But, however, said that, AI is not here to replace people, but it's here to make sure that doctors have, let's say, I don't know, great example, it's very good at diagnosing things. Let's say it does most of the diagnosis. This means that the doctors then have more time to be with patients. And that's great. That's what we want, isn't it? We want technology to do the heavy lifting, so we get the fun stuff, like the human bit. I think that AI is not going to get rid of humanity in that respect. I think it's actually going to aid humanity. We can become more human and have more time because the AI does the heavy lifting.
AI as an enabler of humanity, I think, is a great way of looking at it. I mean, there's a lot of sensationalism around it out there, but when you actually boil down to it and you start to learn about it and use it properly, then the potential, the positive potential, is easy to see. And yet, you and I both know, because we go into many different businesses around the world, that there is a significant knowledge and skills gap, particularly at the top of our organizations. So if I play that to you, what are the implications for leaders of all of this that you've told us so far? And what do they need to know, learn, and do differently?
It's the implications of it, as I say, it's a bit like being the Victorian days or something, and suddenly electricity is around. You know, what are the implications of that? Huge. What's the implications of when the printing press was first invented? It's huge. I mean, it's outside of our realm actually of understanding, because it changes everything. Yeah, not just a small bit of technology. This is literally a paradigm shift. It's the same for leaders. Like, if they have something which is new, how do they help their people change? Because leaders will say, oh, well, people don't like change. No, they do. People love change. In fact, if anything, change is constant. We all know, you know, when people get older, they seem to enjoy the process. You know, it's human beings, we grow and we evolve, and this is what careers do. People love change. They just don't love sudden and unpredictable change. So leaders have to have enough knowledge to be able to hold their hands and be those servant leaders that we need to guide them through this thing. They need to be the coaches of this. They need to be the people in the forefront as well, Jeremy. You know, we can't kid ourselves here. If you're in a situation where your boss or your leader doesn't understand artificial intelligence, it's the same as the boss and leader that didn't understand email. It's the same as the boss or leader that didn't understand the printing press. It's the same principle. It's just a different technology. It doesn't change. Just like years and years ago, I was teaching people about digital marketing, and I still had bosses saying, well, we'll never need a website. You don't need a website. Websites, I don't have. I've got a business card. I've got a print, you know, I've got the print, we've got a printing press. We've got all these things. Of course, this is huge industries. This is in our lifetime. Yeah. This next change, though, will happen so quickly that those bosses and those, I say bosses, we'll be careful with those words, but those leaders who haven't embraced this and don't understand this, means that they will lose people, because people will leave, but also they'll lose business, because business will move so quickly that they won't be able to keep up. This isn't just digital transformation. This is utter transformation. This is a paradigm shift, mainly because AI gives your people who are engaged with the process the ability to be 2, 3, 4 times more productive, maybe up to 10 times more productive. And I'm not joking when I say that. The work that I've been doing with clients, it's 10 times more productive, especially in marketing. It's 10 times more productive. Now, what happens if your agency suddenly becomes 10 times more productive? Or what happens if you think to yourselves, actually, we don't need a marketing person anymore because I'm going to do it myself? Yeah. that process of change, because I don't think it's going to get rid of jobs. I think it's actually going to create new jobs. But that process of change, that moment of potential friction, and that bit where you have to guide people, that's the ability that leaders must have. Because without that human ability to not downplay the uncertainty, but certainly give understanding around it, that means that people will be scared. And what we don't want is people being scared. By the way, this is exactly why right now you've got governments who are scared. You've got large organizations who are controlling media outlets whose only narrative is AI is like the Terminator, it's going to kill us all. But that's okay, because their narrative when the bicycle came around was bicycles will destroy society. It was the same story. It never changes. Computers will kill us all. Okay. Video games will make everyone violent. We know the stories. They're as old as the hills themselves. But I think what we've got to realize now is that the power is now in our own hands. And I think that's what's different about this bit. It's normally that you have to buy a computer, but we've already got computers. It's normally you'd have to get access to the internet, but we've already got it. So all those enablers, all those bits like you'd normally kind of need there'd normally be some kind of gatekeepers around that. There isn't any here. Until they create some, Jeremy, which I think they might do very soon. I think governments will start handing out licenses and stopping people do this, which is exactly why I teach people about it in the AI marketing course, because I have a feeling if you can empower yourself now, that when they start coming and saying, oh, do you need an AI license? We can say, yes, I've got one. This is my knowledge and this is what we do. But we'll see. I think there's other people who also believe that's going to be the case. It's going to be interesting. I hope that they don't. I hope that we can lobby the governments enough for them to realize this is about productivity and happiness, and they stop it. But those in power don't always like change either.
No, they don't. But neither, and that's politics, but it's also business as well. And I count myself as a more enlightened leader personally. I'm a leadership development expert as well, but yeah. I'm also a business leader. I've signed up for your AI marketing course because I need to learn about this, because I understand what you're saying there, that the acceleration, the shift is coming so quickly. Speed can be competitive advantage here. So what do you say to resistant leaders who are saying, like they did with your printing press and whatever, we don't need the website, we don't need this AI? What's kind of the one sentence that stops them in their track, Dan?
Well, I'll be honest with you, it sounds awful, but I actually don't worry when people say it anymore, because I think it's such a deep thing. There's so much opportunity here. I don't need to convince you that AI is a good thing. If you don't see the power of computer intelligence inside your organization, then you've missed so many meetings that I'm kind of reticent to kind of sit down and go, well, computers are a good idea. Well, computers make you quicker. Being quicker is quite good, and productivity is quite good. Because what you're actually saying is you've misunderstood the last 25 years of evolution of society. Now, that's totally fine. We're all God's children, and that's up to you. It's your journey, it's your path. But yeah, I've kind of gone down the there was last year when I was still trying to convince people and trying to kind of beat the drum for AI. But now it's so blatantly obvious, because you can show someone how they can use AI in 5 minutes and they go, oh my God, that's pretty impressive. And you go, yeah, but now let's think creatively together. And in 10 minutes, they're like, oh my goodness, this could change everything. And in 20 minutes, you could most probably change a workflow. And in an hour, you could definitely change their job. And in an afternoon, which is what I do with training companies, some of them are just like, this changes our whole organization. Because of course it does. All those things that you didn't think you had time to do, the AI now gives you the time to do them. Now, some people would like to hide behind that excuse, especially sometimes leaders and middle managers, and they'll say, I don't have time to manage people, but it's their job to manage people. Now, the AI can't manage you, but it can take a lot of the grunt work away from other things that you didn't like doing, reports, etc. Anything with words, anything with knowledge, it can most probably almost better than you. But more importantly, you can do it, or the AI can do it. You can then edit it, because people like to be in control, and rightly so. You should always double check everything. And then that gives you, you lift up 5 hours, 10 hours a week, which means you can become the manager that people need you to be. You can become the leader, the husband, whatever bit you say you haven't got time to do. AI gives you the time to do it. Now, for us, Jeremy, this is going to be the fascinating thing. Will society allow us to do that? Or will society instead say, right, everyone's twice as productive, brilliant, we make more money? Or will society go, everyone's more productive, great, it's 3-day work weeks? Will we job share, or will we actually say, oh no, I'd rather keep the cash and someone else will be out of work? Now that's too big for my pay grade. What I can tell you is that AI gives us that choice now. And that's why it's so exciting. It will enable us to become 2, 3, 4 times more productive. What management and what leaders then do with that? Well, I hope they create happier workplaces because they've got time to.
That's really interesting for me to go into a little bit deeper. And move away from, I think we understand some of the costs of not doing this now, but if we look at it more positively, and those more enlightened leaders who are embracing this and modeling that sort of future now leadership, if you like, let's go forward 5 years, which is a long time in the current speed of change. What do you see as the role of generative AI and personal assistant, AI driven personal assistants for leaders that help leaders enable, enhance, supercharge their own role, others' roles, and the whole way of working of their business?
Well, I think we've got to be careful again with timescales here. I think if you go 5 years, you go too far in the future. You literally do. I think if you said in a year's time, I think in a year's time, we will have personal assistants that are up to the standard of a decent C-suite team. Yeah, that's how good it's going to get. So that's only in a year's time. I think in 6 months' time, I think it'll be, as I say, we're kind of at graduate speed. It might be up to about a 25-year-old. In a year, it'll be about 30. In 2 years, it might be they're up to 40. They've got a load of experience, but it could even be a lot quicker than that. So if you can imagine, if you could take all the data, this is what all AI machines and other things are based on, of course. You take all your data of your company, yeah, and you put it into a machine, and then the machine can come up with any answer. That's kind of where we're almost at the moment, by the way. Yeah. And people go, oh my goodness, this means no one's got a job. Well, no, that would be ridiculous, of course, because you've still got to listen to the machine and take action. But the machine is telling you stuff that normally it would take you 3 days to know. The machine is doing stuff where it might take you 3 weeks to know. I've got friends of mine at the moment who are coders who use the machine to help them code, and they are 20 times more productive because the machine can code, and they would go, oh my goodness, I wouldn't have worked that out. And it just says, this is how you work it out. This is how you do it. Now remember, it's got all the code. It goes into GitHub. It does all these different things. Graphic designing work now would normally take, I don't know, maybe a week to come up with some of the images that you can create in a second. Now that changes everything. Now this, by the way, and a lot of people believe in business, and this is one of the bizarrest fallacies. They believe that business is more complicated than art, but art is more complicated than business, because it's to do with nuance, yeah, and creativity and nuance. Business isn't. There's a series of very basic things you can do in business, which is why, without being disrespectful to anyone, a lot of business decisions, and again, I've got to be careful with words because a lot of these people are my clients as well. A lot of business decisions can be slowed down by humans making them, because it's a bit like if you used Excel, is Excel quicker than you using a piece of paper? Well, you better believe it is. It does stuff you couldn't do on a piece of paper. Now, my dad would say, don't be ridiculous. We should always have a slide rule and pieces of paper. But he wouldn't be as quick as someone using Excel. Does that mean that maths is redundant? Does it? Heck, of course it doesn't. Does that mean that understanding business is redundant because a machine helps you? No. What about if you're, literally I saw one today in the CRM system, and you put the data in. In fact, you can actually do this with Code Interpreter, but that's different. But you don't even need to get a CRM system. You can actually do this just with AI. And it can pick your best customers, and it can use predictive analysis to say what might happen next. Now, that's what you usually had a team to do. Now you can do it yourself. Now, does that mean that you don't want a CFO? Far from it. Of course you don't. You need a CFO. Of course you do. Do you want a CMO? Of course you want a CMO. But you want every single one of them to be supercharged with AI, mainly because you can then say, hey, Dan, what's your outcomes? And Dan goes, oh, this is my outcomes for marketing. You go, great. Now, if I do them in a day because I used AI, that's awesome. We should all be happy with that. Yeah. Now, old business leaders might say, rubbish, I'm only going to pay you for a day then. Yeah. And I think they'll lose people because it should all be based on outcomes. So that whole thing we talked about years ago, Jeremy, about being outcome focused and outcome based and objective based in leadership, that can now happen because you can give someone that outcome and that objective, and they can do it using clever tools twice as quick as maybe you thought they could. Does that mean you should come back to them and say, oh, here's some more work? Or do they then spend more time with their child? Do they spend more time recharging the old brain matter, sleeping more, being more creative, going for walks, having a bath? AI is not going to be more creative than human beings are when human beings are happy. That's the reality. Yeah, we never get AI. AI is a brilliant replicator, but it's a replicator of things. The actual creation of things, that's a human domain. And that's a human domain, as we know. If you're in a flow state and you're happy, as we all know, positive psychology, that's when great, amazing things happen. And also, again, without watering on too much about teams, teams are the things that create amazing things. That's why actually we have teams who come together to form companies. Yeah, that human, I'm not getting rid of the human interaction, far from it. I'm saying we should have more time bouncing ideas off each other and chatting and going for food and meeting each other and being friendly. More time doing that, because AI's working out that bloody marketing report you couldn't be bothered to do that you've got on your desk for the last 3 days, or it's working out the sentiment analysis of your employees from a Slack messages. Exactly what your flock is now doing with its innovation. So all those different things make it very possible. From a business point of view, does that give you more opportunities? I think that's just how you look at it.
It is, and I'm interested to know then, because there are clearly organizations and leaders who are doing this well, and I totally agree with you that that's it. To become outcome based is the best thing, because then you're more productive, you make time to, if you like, either have the balance, get more creative, not necessarily to do more, it's doing smart, either that's for yourself or within the business. So what examples could you pull up for us of organizations or leaders getting this right?
Well, I hate to talk about people who we don't always think are the most fashionable, but you look at someone like Microsoft. You look at, obviously, the number one, they were sensible enough. And I think this is something that people don't talk about, is the diversity and inclusion that Microsoft has been actually famed for the last 5 years. It's that changing company culture that has allowed them to do this. But not only that, they've now, not only did they put the money into OpenAI, and therefore get a lot of back. Remember, Bing now is taking huge amounts of shares off Google in the way of how people are using it. But also, this whole world is now changing, so it's no longer search engine stuff. Google already said, that's many years ago, that it wasn't a search engine company; it was an AI company. But it's lost its way as an AI company. You look at some of the biggest tech companies in the world, and they're playing catch up to someone who they considered to be asleep, which was Microsoft. So I don't think you could get a better example of a good company. Now, of course, it's a massive company, so you could argue lots of different things around it. But the reality is, it's just a culture of openness and inclusion and diversity and understanding allows them to bring it in. You should see the stuff now that Microsoft, I don't know if you've seen Microsoft Designer, but it gives Canva a run for its money. Some of the stuff it can do now is breathtaking. You look at some of the stuff it can now do with Excel. You think about the distribution that this now has into businesses. Look at how well Teams is done. All this stuff is just based on data. So you look at the large companies, then you can look at much smaller companies that we work with your flock and other people. But those smaller businesses are harder to see because they're tiny, if that makes sense. So they're doing things now that are, they are looking at different ways of working. And I go back to this whole kind of, can you just create happiness at work? And if you do, then more people are more engaged, and therefore you make more money. It comes back to that happy people first. Yeah, and that's what your flock was helping with. But this AI moment means it's happy people who are productive and doubly productive. Now they will become the market leaders, and that can be almost in any organization, Jeremy. It can be in almost any vertical. It can be almost anywhere. There are some verticals that are going to be much more affected than others, marketing being one of the key ones, law, of course, health tech, as we've just talked about as well. But, things like hospitality, that will be part of course. In fact, there most probably isn't anywhere that AI isn't going to touch. It's just how quickly it does it. And I think that's going to be the key one. I think there's going to be most probably 3 or 4 areas that it catches fire real quick. And there are a lot of opportunities in those areas. As I say, marketing is the key one. I also think around entrepreneurship, but again, I promise myself I wouldn't ruffle on too much, but that's a different thing.
I'll take that, marketing, entrepreneurship. But the one that really hits me there is for that big implication for the rest of the organization is that it's almost like the happiness index. If we get this right, actually we can be much more happy in our jobs, happy with the people that we work with, happy with the relationship that we have with technology and the AI personal assistants that we have. So I know many, as we come to the end of this, I know many of those tuning in will think, okay, but this seems massive to me. Where do I get started? So just to kind of close out here, Dan, from your own experience working with global organizations and small organizations, what are the 4 or 5 tips that you'd give leaders who have the right mindset behind this to accelerate progress and thrive in the age of AI?
Well, the big one really, and we'll start off with kind of a top one, which is, it's that whole thing about fear, isn't it? False evidence appearing real. Yeah, we are in a place now where uncertainty is one of the worst human emotions that you can have. A lot of people are uncertain about a lot of things. AI comes along, we call it AI, which again I think is a mistake. It's just computer intelligence. It's just the ability of computers to do more than they did before. That's all it is. As we say artificial intelligence, people start panicking because they think it's Terminator. So I think first of all we got terminology wrong, but everyone, billions of people are using the word AI, so I'm not going to argue with them. But in your own head, if we get rid of the fear of that by simply relabeling it as computers and computer intelligence, and you can go back to your people and say, hey, how do we use computers better? Instead of saying how do we use artificial intelligence, because technically you're not using it anyway. You won't be using it. It's this is the whole thing about machine learning is what you use, and AI is what you put on the PowerPoint. The reality is it's computer intelligence. How can you use computers better? That's the first one. Second one is knowing the fact you've got to use computers better. What are the tools that are out there that can help you do so? Now, this is where you get this paralysis analysis at the moment, because there are literally tens of thousands of tools. Yeah. However, they're mainly based on only 4 different models. Yeah, the large language models are normally the same that are running it. And I hate to destroy an industry in one go, but the reality is that most of these things are a wraparound around GPT-4, because they are, and they were before. They're just very clever, but they're just very clever boxes, but they're just colored differently with different wrapping paper. When you unwrap it, it's likely to be the same. Yeah. So how can your organization use one of these large language models now? And it's open source. It's open source. It's, you have no reason why you can't use it. It's £20 a month for using OpenAI, using that one. And in fact, there's ways around that. If you're careful about budget, you use something like Typing Mind. I'll send you the link for it. You can use Typing Mind and actually use an API key and not even pay the £20 a month. So I'll teach you that on the course. Yeah. So that saves you £20 a month. Yeah. But that's for every person. So the big one is those 2 is get the tools, the ones that are these big tools, get into everybody. Yeah. There's no excuse. Until OpenAI close the doors, there's no excuse. So do it now. Get everyone OpenAI, just the same as get everyone a computer, get everyone on the internet, get everyone an email address. It's the same principle. It's no different, right? So use tools. Third one would be, if you want to start having a deeper conversation, start thinking about your own data. Okay, start thinking about the data, because the data that you put into the machines, and this is later on thinking, will be the stuff you get out. It's just garbage in, garbage out. The same with all computers. It's always been the same. Yeah. None of this stuff is particularly new, but you've just got to think about it, that data is now the most important thing. If you put dirty petrol into the car will not work. If you put the wrong petrol in the car will stall. So what's your data situation? Yeah? 4, if you're going to be using it and you're a larger organization, you have to start thinking about privacy and ethics. Okay, and you have to start thinking about that now, because it will come around later. Yeah, so this is what I get not cross with, but I've spoke to several very large organizations, household names, and they're still letting their people use a free version of GPT. Yeah, because it's free, and let them play around with it. If they're putting in company data into that, there is a problem later on. So what is your AI policy? Schools need an AI policy right now. Businesses definitely need one. If you're letting your people use it, and by the way, a lot more people are using it than you might think as a leader, they might even tell you they are, because they're worried that you'll say, oh, then you're fired, but oh, here's some more work to do because you found a clever way of doing your other work. Yeah, and that's what you have to be very open about. But that 4th bit is your ethical implications. And then the 5th bit, which kind of is an obvious, of course, for every leader when it comes to this moment of change, is, if you are not providing the vision, yeah, then there is a deeper problem. So, okay, vision's going to be important. You're going to have to start thinking about, how do you upskill your people? That's just about getting training, true, giving them the right resources, which is talked about with the tools, of course, giving them the right incentives, so they don't not want to be part of this. They want to do it. You've got to give them incentives. You can't punish people for doing things cleverly and working smarter, and then say, oh, as an organization, we want people to work smarter, not harder. Oh, by the way, when you do that, you're going to be in trouble. So that's the big one. It's like looking at your policies, making sure that it's nice and ethical on both sides. And as you said, Jeremy, rightly so, the key bit here is, how do you keep everyone happy during this process of immense change that's coming? And if you could have happy employees, using the right tools with the right resources and the right incentives, with the right skill set, with the vision coming from you, I don't think you can go too far wrong.
Wow. Well, thanks for this amazing tour on AI and more, and how it affects that human touch within our businesses. I'm going to put my brain back in my in my head in a minute and go and lie down in a dark room. Great learning from you. And you actually referenced that you teach a little bit of this, and of course I'm on your AI marketing course as a leader who definitely needs it. Can you just tell us a little bit more about those kind of things that you do with leaders and whoever signs up on these, and what you offer around that? Because I am sure those tuning in will want to learn from the master on this one.
Well, in the course, I actually say I'm not an AI expert. I don't think anyone could be unless you build the stuff yourself. Only Demis and those that are. I'm just a guy who got very excited by. I'm an entrepreneur, an AI entrepreneur rather than an expert. But that's a different point. Because you don't have the same principle, isn't it? It's like you don't have to create your own electricity to realize why electricity is so good. You don't have to. I don't have to build computers to know how to use a computer. I don't have to do the same with cars. Heck, you can do it about almost anything. And so I'm just more of an enthusiast. But anyway, that's a different thing. So yeah, to find out more about it, I mean, I do keynote talks around the future of work and this kind of proposition, especially around AI. But it's around that technology piece anyway, and digital transformation, as you know, Jeremy. So come and find me on dansodergren.com if they want an actual keynote or a conference. Better talk to Pomona Partners, as they're my agent, especially if you're in the UK. If it's international, then I would have a look and maybe talk to Leo at VBQ, because they're my larger speaker agency. I'm very happy that I'm part of their agency. They've got literally some absolutely astounding people on there, as well as myself. And then the other things you can do as individuals, and I say this is mainly for entrepreneurs and for people who have run their own businesses and are solo entrepreneurs who want to save time, but want to make sure that their marketing can be done with AI, not just by AI, but with AI, so they can save time and make more money. That is what the AI marketing course is for. The other stuff that I do, which is around training sessions, which are half a day and a full day, they're for corporates, but they are at a very, very different pricing structure. The reason why I've done that is because the AI marketing course is for individuals to make the most of this, but making sure that they run their own business and they're doing some cool stuff. If you are also, because I had this the other day, if you're someone like Shell, I'm not going to work with you anyway, just so you have to be aware. I have a bit of a moral thing about people that might be a bit evil in the way of capitalism. However, if you're doing some cool and funky stuff and you're a large organization, I'm not going to punish you for being a large organization. I'm very happy to work with them. It's very, very rewarding to do so. But as I say, that's just a very different pricing structure. The only way I can do it so cost effectively with the course that you're on is because I also work with Let's Level Up, who are my partners on that. So that's the only reason, that's the only way I can do it. You can also just search for me at Dan Sodergren if you want to do, and see if my SEO is any good. I don't know. I've done it for years. Have a look if you can find me on the internet.
Well, look, I have to thank you again for joining me, Dan. It's been another great conversation into the future, but kind of now. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you, Jeremy. Always a star.
Thanks for tuning in to the Rethink Leadership podcast with me, Jeremy Blain. Please like, comment, and support us on your favourite platform, and subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch as well as listen to each episode.